Hello and welcome. As the conflict in the Middle East continues to escalate, where are oil prices headed? What should one be wary of as far as geopolitically as well as economically? What are the concerns that we must have as far as equities are concerned, as far as commodities and oil prices are concerned? Well, to decode the entire impact, really, we have with us Peter McGuire, CEO, AustraliaTrading.com. Thank you for your time, Peter. The big question on everyone's mind: where are oil prices headed given this uncertainty and the Middle East crisis escalating?
Well, good afternoon, Sakshi. I think, and greetings from Sydney. I think the great concern is, does this become a prolonged, and that's where we've got to look at it through the lens of, is it going to be short-lived or long-lived? And let's play those scenarios out. If it's short-lived, then that's a better point as far as humanity is concerned and everything. And it just seems to tail off, and by this time next week, it's quickly forgotten. Or does it? And that's the first part. Or the second part is scenario B. It's a prolonged, worn, well-drilled. I would think 3 active components: US, Iran, and of course Israel. And then does it engulf further areas? There's already been talk as far as choke points for the Strait of Hormuz. Everyone, I mean, where you're located, everyone knows what the Persian Gulf looks like. I think anyone could really draw it. And that's so just across from Dubai, if that was to really be impacted, that would greatly, I think, disrupt global transportation. And that is the great unknown, Sakshi. That really is the great unknown.
That is the great unknown, and globally there are concerns, like you said, about the Strait of Hormuz, and if that does indeed shut down. But remember, as far as India is concerned, India's got a diverse portfolio of supplies coming in, as we heard the petroleum minister say. Oil marketing companies have enough stocks for about 3 weeks or more. So, what do you see as far as the India impact is concerned?
Well, I agree with what you're saying there, and India is well positioned, and it hasn't been totally relied on. It's got other countries that it has great relationships with, and don't forget there is a glut of crude oil, and I've said that numerous times. I think into Q3 and Q4 there's going to be absolutely oversupply, and which is going to be a good point as far as cheaper prices. I would think, and let's put our mind back a couple of weeks when President Trump was in the UAE, Qatar, and of course Saudi, meeting with Crown Prince MBS, Mohammed bin Salman. I'm pretty sure that there were talks there. I'm not suggesting about this current situation, but talks there about what does the world look like from an oil production standpoint, and they can quickly come to the fore if Iran was to be taken out as far as oil production. There are numerous other countries that could fill that breach, Sakshi. And so I don't think you're going to see a crunch time that there's just all of a sudden 30% of the world's crude oil demand is taken out of the market. I don't see that happening. There could be choke points. There could be issues if Yemen gets involved and around to the Houthis, all of that. And, Bab el-Mandeb, that's straight leading into the Red Sea. So I feel relatively confident, but you're dealing in a very, very contentious and dynamic situation that's live.
A dynamic situation, and you, of course, began, Peter, by telling me whether this will be short-lived or could this conflict last longer than anticipated. What would you be looking at? What scenario are you betting on then? Or what scenario are you thinking is more likely to take place?
I want to keep a close eye, first off, naturally, crude oil prices, and I want to see what happens in New York tonight. So we're about 7 or 8 hours, I think, from the New York opening, and that would be crucial. We've had some big spikes in the futures, and Asia trade was up at one point, I think 4 or 5% today. It's back at around about 2% up, or not quite. So I want to keep an eye, one, on US dollar index. It's back at 99 or just on 99, so it's bounced from those lows in the last week. I want to see if that momentum, Sakshi, was to continue uplift, that flight to safety, regardless of what everyone says, we'll fly to euro or we'll have a different outlook. I still think king dollar is king dollar. So I want to keep an eye. King dollar, I want to see what happens as far as bond yields on the 10-year and the 2-year. I want to see what happens as far as equities. it wasn't really a big sell-off today on Asia equities. You know, it was pretty mild, I thought. And I've also had a look at US futures. They're not down by much. So I want to gauge this sort of interaction and see where that market sentiment goes. And then I want to see the big gorilla in the room is what happens as far as ongoing strikes from Iran into Israel. If that was to intensify, then that changes, I think, the footprint.
Right. So the spotlight on equities, on oil prices, precious metals, even everything really reacting to this crisis. Geopolitically, what are you anticipating, Peter?
I would hope that I sit in Sydney, Australia. We're a long way from anywhere. You know that. I mean, we're very incredibly remote. And we're a 14-hour flight to Dubai, 14 hours to San Francisco. So we're a long way from anywhere and 10 hours to Tokyo. So I would hope sitting here that there would be minimal disruption, minimal casualties. And if the whole situation could really just, settle itself down. Is that going to happen? I don't know. And no one knows the future. I would think possibly President Trump may know the future, but it's very unknown. And those unknown unknowns create a dynamic situation when you're looking at market sentiment, because that changes all of a sudden within minutes. You could really see a super spike in one, oil, secondly in King dollar, and thirdly uncertainty. Because if Iran intensifies its attacks on Israel, I'm sure that Israel is going to retaliate, and there will be a point in time that I would think the US would get more involved.
Right. So a dynamic situation unfolding. Thank you so much for decoding this for our viewers and for sharing your thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you.